I mean, even beyond bullying, it just feels like it's also about the viciousness of a kind of person who, and possibly we've all been that kind of person at one point, who has to destroy everything in order to own it.
Alabama Take Projection.
Hey, welcome to Taking It Down, the TV and streaming podcast from the Alabama Take. We give thoughts that range from complex to simple, from analytical to basic about shows and movies on TV. I'm Blaine Duncan, editor-in-chief of the website The Alabama Take. I've always enjoyed determining why I like and dislike things. I have a little bit of a side hustle as an English teacher, so hopefully that lends itself to our busy listeners who want some insight. It's great for listeners that it's not just me breaking down what you want to know. It's Adam Morrow, our erudite touring and studio musician who keeps up with fine literature, Donovan Ronwald, who specializes in media at a New England college and loves film, old books, and more. And Natalie Morrow. She's the first person to go to about fantasy, sci-fi, comics, trashy reality TV, and Beyonce's music. We're here for lovers of television who are just too busy for anything more than the series or movie itself, or maybe for the person who just does not want the typical critic or Hollywood-adjacent analysis. Plus, like a lot of Alabama Take productions, we're high quality. We actually think. Let's get into the show. Hey y'all. So we get this intro, right, where I tell who everyone is. Are you guys tired of that? Let us know. Hit us up on Instagram and leave a comment. You know,
Email compliance at olemiss.edu.
classic. Guys, I want to say something here. Hugh Freeze coached a goddamn football game from a hospital bed brought to the stadium. Now, if that's not a coach. No, that is not where we're going. We got our usual folks here. We got Adam, Natalie, Donovan. You hear that, it's who they are at the beginning, at the top of the show. I can take that out if you guys are tired of it. If you would rather just hear us dive into what we're going to talk about and follow along with timestamps, we can do it. It's up to y'all. First and foremost, really quick segment coming up right here. True Detective new season. Got a teaser this week. I think it's the second teaser. I didn't watch the first one. It avoided me somehow. Boy, oh boy, is this one sizzling with potential. We've got a rarely used setting of Alaska. Great actors. Promising mystery, which is usually the case with a True Detective season. Lots of darkness and creepiness. Great timing for the darkness because it's going to premiere in January, likely airing weekly. We're down for a weekly show. But I am especially glad to see actor John Hawkes working. He, in my opinion, is the most underused character actors. You may know him from Deadwood, Winter's Bone, 3 Billboards. He's in one of my favorite movies of the last 25 years, Martha Macy May Marlene. Fantastic performance there. He should have won millions of awards throughout the years, but he always plays sort of small parts. He's one of my favorite characters in Deadwood. That's more about John Hawkes. But let's talk about True Detective. Its new season in January. We've got a tease. It's called, remind me of the subtitle, True Detective Winter's Bone?
Night Country.
Thank you. Did you just look at a note? Do you take notes for this show?
No, I didn't watch the trailer, so I'm reading about it right now.
Oh, it's a trailer. It's not.
We can all watch it live on here.
We should. Pop it up. If this were our YouTube version, we could just drop it in there. I'm more than stoked. If they can get this even halfway right, it's going to be excellent.
The burn that happened between season 1 and season 2 is not fully healed. The wound is not fully healed on this program, because I loved season 1 so much. I mean, I think season 1 may be even the basis of this group, like, talking in depth about television.
That's fair.
That and the golden age of Mad Men and Breaking Bad, et cetera, et cetera.
Can I interject, though?
Sure.
You didn't watch season 3.
I didn't, and I know it's supposed to have gotten...
Oh, okay.
Dude.
Season 3 wasn't too bad.
Dude, season 3 has got some heart. It's good.
It has
good.
A lot of heart.
Yeah.
Season 2, if it hadn't come after... I went into season 2 thinking season 1 was so good, I didn't love the last episode. Maybe season 2 is like... Even if they don't have all of the magic of the first 7 episodes of season 1, maybe they can temper that by landing the plane a little better, and they'll have a great product. You know, you go into something and you want to read into everything, and then it's just like Vince Vaughn doing shitty business deals about it, and you're just like, I don't care.
We
You
we
get so burned.
we learned that he's not a load-bearing Vince Vaughn.
Right. But I think it probably would have been like, okay, if it had just been TV, I would have been like, this is above average, even. But it wasn't. It was compared to season 1. I have not watched season 3. This trailer looks very good. I'm excited.
But season 2 was immensely watchable. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
my
Was
God.
it?
Yeah, I thought so. When he would go,
I thought it
I
was
thought
kind
it
of.
was pretty.
I thought the mystery was really boring.
I mean, what the
Yeah.
hell was his son's name? Chad? What was his son's name? What was the redheaded son's name whom was being
Chad.
bullied? I want to know what happened to Chad. True Detective Winter's Bone. What are you thinking? Jodie Foster.
Yeah, cautiously optimistic, just because as Adam spoke for me, where it's like the wound has not yet healed. Like I liked season 3. Season 3 was definitely much better than 2. It didn't hurt them. Mahershala Ali's great. Kind of like a little sentimental too. Season 3 was a little like,
In a good way, I
things
thought.
sometimes things work. Yeah, sometimes things work out. Which
It wasn't
we'll see
saccharine.
if that we'll see if that attitude continues into the last frontier, right?
And Natalie just read a recap. So, Natalie, where are you?
Literally only read the cast list. And I can tell you, just based on what I've read, a brief sentence talking about how it's in the long nights, and I'm already just cold.
Well, it's going to hit us in January 14th, I think, or 15th, whatever day that's promised. I think that everything about this, assuming it's halfway decent, like I said, everything about this is going to work for the show. I don't know if they did all this on purpose. Usually they do a lot of things on purpose like this, but releasing in the middle of January and being right in the darkness of Alaska winter, that's smart.
Good idea.
Speaking of good ideas, I don't have segues. I just realized this week, and I'm just like, I need to start doing segues into these shows. Speaking of good ideas, Netflix giving Wes Anderson 4 short films. Brilliant. And this is coming from a guy who, I'm not going to say burned. My Wes Anderson fandom dipped to the point where I wasn't a fan during, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 films. Although I did enjoy seeing Moonrise Kingdom.
That's the one you'd pick out of that run?
Yeah, I thought it was quaint and very kind of sweet. Yeah,
So there's a lot of judgment happening right now.
I know, but I saw it in the theater with my wife in Asheville, North Carolina, when it was like barely playing anywhere. It just had everything kind of meshed together to make that a good experience for me.
Grand Budapest is, I think, one of his better movies.
Definitely.
See, I didn't like that one.
And I think Moonrise Kingdom is his worst movie.
I can see it, but I have a soft spot for it. But we've got 3 to talk about, 3 short ones. Last week we talked about the first and the longest, which was The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. It's been noted by a few critics to take them all as a piece. You don't really have to do that, I don't think, but we can kind of do that as a group here to a degree. The second in the films is The Rat Catcher. Here you got Ray Fiennes as the titular catcher of rats. Man, this shows why this guy is a excellent actor. Is he an Oscar winner? Did he win an Oscar for The English Patient or not?
That's a good question.
Yeah, he deserves one from something. Usually when an actor does a role, I can still see the actor in there, or I can see, that's kind of the same thing Robert Downey Jr. did for Tony Stark as he's doing in this lawyer role. Okay, fine. Sometimes a lot, sometimes a little that happens. Ray Fiennes seems to relish playing this rat catcher, and I really didn't see anything he had ever done much before. Not a lot. His, what would you call that, Adam? A Cockney British accent he's doing? It's not his usual British accent.
It definitely reminds. So the accent he's doing is very much like crap. The character he plays in Bruges. It's like bruv.
It's a Cockney thing, we're in the
Yeah.
we're in South, we're in the Alabama for the most part. We're in the States. What do you think, Donald?
South and certainly working class, right? Like it's not the King's English exactly.
Fun one. Fiennes has my favorite line, and I think it's due to his delivery, which is, "Everybody's got rats." What a line. In context, The rat catcher. What'd you think, Donovan? We'll be kind of general for Adam and Natalie, and then we can
I
do more.
liked, and I think this applies to all of them. I liked all three,
Me
so thumbs
too.
up for me. It was kind of interesting how, like, they all have PG ratings and are from Roald Dahl, who like is supposedly like a children's author mostly,
Yeah.
but they're like kind of not really for kids. Like, I think if a kid watched this, they'd be bored. I also liked how, of the four of them, the rat catcher felt the nastiest. Just, how Roald Dahl could just, like, he could be a little nasty, right?
So
Like
you've
when he
said
wanted to
I
be.
don't know his work other than when they're made into movies.
Okay. Well, like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, they're basically, going through hell, getting punished by their own vices. And like Matilda, the headmaster mistress, is horrible and abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And James and the Giant Peach, the ants are awful. They get crushed by a giant
Mm-hmm.
peach. So I kind of like that it had that, like, it was a little strange, it was a little off, and it was a little like uncouth.
What'd you make of the ending without spoiling it?
I don't know.
Me
I thought it
either.
was a good ending, but I have no idea what it means.
I'm a fan for an ambiguous ending, and I love this one. It made me think a lot.
Hmm.
Let's get into the next. Poison. I think it's one of my favorites of the four. If I had to say, tough to say, but we'll talk about it more when we get into the fourth and final. But Poison, very much one of my favorites of the four. It focused on conflict, which created such a heightened tension, and then that sudden ending, which may be construed as ambiguous as well at first glance. What did you make of the ending, or maybe even as a statement of what we do to people who are willing to help us? That's was my question after watching it. But take any part of this, start at the end if you want. Adam, you guys have seen Poison.
Hmm.
What you think?
Of the three that we've seen, this was the most that felt like I was somewhere between watching a film and listening to Audible. The information was so rapid fire, and maybe the closed set. They've all been closed sets essentially, but it just made me really think. Oh, I'm like basically being read a story by someone who's particularly into the dramatics of it. But still, the acting was, of course, great. Yeah, I thought it was that one went by the fastest out of all of them. If that's a positive thing to say about a piece of film, I don't know. But I mean, it just was pretty rapid fire, breathless, as it should have been.
Yeah, that's funny that you had that reaction for this one, because I actually had the audiobook reaction for the Swan more than I did for Poison. That was the one where I was like, oh, it's like a nifty audiobook.
The Swan was definitely in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
too.
I saw someone's review that was like, I think I'd like anything if it was just Dev Patel talking at the camera as fast as he possibly can, and
Yeah.
that's sort of been tested this week.
That's something Natalie said is it almost becomes difficult to hear all of the word. They're so
Mm-hmm.
fast.
Mm-hmm.
You're also battling like a home theater setup instead of like nice, well, theoretically nice speakers at your local theater. So there's some things that just hit a certain timbre that we kind of struggled to hear.
Natalie, what'd you think of Poison?
I enjoyed it. I mean, I agree with Adam and Donovan. Sorry, this is very distracting. But it was like Adam said. It was some of it you just missed because it was quiet and fast, and Southern ears don't always catch British English as quickly as we ought to.
Not rapid fire. That's for darn sure. This is, I mean, and this is part of the film, but I'm just like continually amazed at Wes Anderson's ability to snap his fingers and get an ensemble cast. It was only three, Dev Patel, Ben Kingsley, and Cumberbatch, but there was no one else in that movie. They were great. All I love that.
Yeah.
Ray Fiennes made an appearance as the
Oh,
writer.
that's true. I forgot about
Yeah.
him. I kind of like him hovering over all of these shorts, because I think he's in all three of them, and Henry Sugar,
He had
of
the
course.
snake in the jar there.
That's right.
I don't know, Blaine. The ending. I'm kind of fascinated to know what y'all think happened. Any reaction to that?
Man, my first reaction was it was a bit of racism, but at the same time,
Mhm.
is that where Dahl traffics? I mean, he too being a racist himself.
I thought it was more like, yes, it is race and colonialism, but we're not necessarily sympathetic to him being nasty, or more on the side of the doctor
Or maybe it's
who
classist.
understands that like he could literally save your life, and he would never afford you the respect that he deserves.
And there's also something of like when Dev Patel tries to congratulate him at the end and say, "You saved his
Hmm.
life." That's a great thing. And Kingsley's character is very unsure how to, what there's like a blank space of an accomplishment and the bitter taste of how he was dismissed.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's not like he, put a tourniquet on him or restarted his heart or did something very material and then the guy was nasty to him. He may have done something that saved his life and then just goes away into the ether, for lack of a better term there.
Yeah, it kind of. So I think there's a lot to unpack with it, but for me, it sort of fit with the everything Adam said fit with the film as a whole because it is sort of anticlimax, like you said, Adam. Like he didn't necessarily do anything; they don't know, and the whole punchline of the film is anticlimax, right? Like they pick the seat up and there's no snake there, so who knows what, and then it turns into something else. And I felt like it thematically fit in, if nothing else.
It's one to think about. Another one to think about was the Swan. A different sort of thinking. It ended. I'm going to start with the ending on it as well. It ended with such profound sadness. That line of my darling boy, what's happened to you," was just heartbreaking.
This is when it ended, Natalie pointed out how not for kids so much of children's literature is. To me, this was like the quintessential, this is so sad and particularly British
Hmm.
sad. If there had been a boarding school involved, it would have been the icing on the cake, but there wasn't. That's such a. If fairy tales can kind of do the same thing at
Hmm.
times, it just had this very particular brand of melancholy.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was so sad. Every part
Uh
of it was
huh.
sad.
These four films are just Wes Anderson at his best. I think that it's the surreal artifice we talked about last week that clashes up against the truth and emotion that's there, yet still has that beautiful Anderson aesthetic. I'd say The Swan is my favorite and as good as Anderson can get, with Poison being probably my second favorite of the four.
It made me think a lot too. Adam, you were saying like how dark children's lit is, but I think Anderson's always kind of gotten that. Like he has the bit which he completely made up in Fantastic Mr. Fox, where like Fox and his wife are talking, and she's like, "I love you, but I shouldn't have married you." And it's like you're bringing an 8-year-old to this movie. Like, what is the, that's
Right.
that's complex. Like, there's something there.
To me, that line is one that the parent who brings the 8-year-old understands, and the 8-year-old does not.
Absolutely.
The Swan is like they shot this bird and cut its wings off. This is the saddest, most brutal, and most surreal thing I think that Anderson has ever done.
Yeah.
It's definitely the most fantastical.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're forgetting that they also tied this kid up and put him to be run over by a train to start it
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
I really found it interesting that like they had two actors for the whole thing. Like they had a closed set and everything, but it was so minimalist. Like there's no train, there's a drawing of a train.
Yes.
I don't know, it felt like it contributed. For my experience, it contributed to my enjoyment just because I thought it's so odd.
I do wonder why Anderson made those choices. He does it in The Rat Catcher, he does it in Poison, I think. He does it in Henry Sugar, where there's something that's supposed to be there, but he chooses not to show it. It's not
Hmm.
there on screen. Specifically with The Rat Catcher, he says, "Here's a rat," and he's just holding nothing. It's just, you're supposed to imagine a rat there.
I mean, when the Swan, to me, them having an empty space where the Swan is supposed to be is my brain did all the work
Hmm.
for me there. Like it's sad enough, and I think any actual representation would have maybe undercut that.
If you've ever experienced bullying, this one hit. I mean, hit. Yeah, I think it maybe says something about those of us who appreciate the beauty in simple things like birds and nature and tend to be a magnet for the type of bullying you see here. Pretty brutal. I think each of these four films were made to reflect that they're telling stories and not reality, though. That's kind of what I conclude. Like when the gun's fired, what do they do? Bang or something like that?
Bang!
I mean, it's
Yeah.
funny, but it's also it's an idea that, hey, this is a story. When the rat catcher holds a rat to display it, it's a story. It's kind of a reminder that there is reality in the tales we have told, as fictional as they may be.
Yeah.
I loved these four. Really, really glad we watched them and talked about them. Really loved the Swan.
They're like the most adult children's shorts, I think, like short films that I've seen for a long time. Because, like, I don't know if an 8-year-old would be entertained by this, but I sure liked it.
The Swan would be good to show in a class, I think. We talked about this in the YouTube portion where you could do something for a class in college or younger, high school. But this one you could, I think. And bullying is still ever present in high school. Still a thing.
I mean, even beyond bullying, it just feels like it's also about the viciousness of a kind of person who, and possibly we've all been that kind of person at one point, who has to destroy everything in order to own it.
I'm going to have to take a break because you hit me right between the eyes with that one. Let's do that, actually. Let's take a break so that in the next segment, we're going to talk about the fall of the House of Usher for a little bit. Hey, speaking of autumn, which is also called fall, we're going to talk about the fall of the House of Usher.
Nailed it.
Really trying to work on my segues.
Should have gone with like an actual Usher lyric.
Yeah.
Let me begin this segment by saying that it's not a reality show about the singer-songwriter. So if you haven't watched and you just want some...
I was about to say, that actually sounds better.
Yeah.
So.
We're out.
Usher's house is perfectly fine. It is standing.
Stable.
We don't believe there's structural issues there.
Mm-hmm. I will say Mike Flanagan did this show, The Fall of the House of Usher, and I think it's a very wise choice from Flanagan not to do blackface with the man playing Usher. I do wish he would have cast a black actor, but No. The Netflix show is from creator, writer, director Mike Flanagan, who's done other shows for Netflix in the same genre. He's done The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, and The Midnight Club. Maybe one or two other things. Much like those, he's taken an old horror story and modernized it with a lot of additions or combinations of that writer's work weaved throughout. The family of Usher, it's a family, it's not the singer-songwriter. The family of Usher in this one, rather than in Poe's original, is Big Pharma family, who has made their millions from addictive medicine called Ligadone, surely a substitute for Oxycontin. In the opening scenes of the very first episode, the patriarch Roderick Usher is left alone in a way, almost alone, as all of his 6 children, he has 6, they've all died under odd circumstances, of course, because it's Mike Flanagan. So we're going to spoil the first episode for sure. We may spoil episodes 1 and 2, okay? But we'll start general. We'll tell you when you can stop if you haven't watched it. If you have, let us know what you think too. To start general though, are you any of you Edgar Allan Poe fans? Would you call yourselves that?
I don't know fans so much, but I mean he is really influential, right? Like everyone read The Pit and the Pendulum, The Telltale Heart, the one with is it the black cat, right? Where he puts the cat, his wife's body in the wall, and the cat's still in there too, eating her. It's just it's so gruesome and grotesque. It sticks with you.
The thing with me and Poe, I realized in the 3rd episode of this show, I was like, damn, I have read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe. Like a lot. You just brought up one I forgot I'd read, which is The Telltale Heart. I read that one a lot, many times. I think, just to talk about Poe for a second, if y'all will allow me, I think his sentences are just some of the most pristine. I can't believe he was hated during his time. Listen to this sentence from The Mask of the Red Death. There were buffoons, there were improvisatori, there were ballet dancers, there were musicians, there were cards, there was beauty, there was wine. All these in security were within. Without was the Red Death. The use of the word without there is just like, yeah. And the other one I'll quote from him, which I think flies off the page in just beauty, is from The Fall of the House of Usher, the actual story. I am aware, however, that this very ancient family had been noted, time out of mind, for a peculiar sensibility of temperament, displaying itself through long ages in many works of exhaled heart and manifested in deeds of charity. Probably, the idea there is that that's probably where Bob Dylan got time out of mind for an album title, which I think is really cool too. I'm a fan of Poe, so I didn't realize how big of a fan of Poe I was until I started thinking, oh, I've read that. Oh, I've read that. I love these quotes. I love The Raven, still to this day. It's a little cheesy to
Really?
say so, but
Interesting.
love it.
Because it just goes on and on.
Man, but there are some sentences in there. It's just good stuff.
I mean, he did invent the detective story. I'm willing to tip my hat to him.
Dupin, who's a character in this?
Dupin, yeah.
That's from Murders plural at Rue Morgue.
Yeah, Murders in the Rue Morgue and The Purloined Letter. And then
Murder Most Foul.
Well,
Brothers, what brothers?
but yeah, before we get into spoilers again, this is how I often feel about Mike Flanagan's shows on Netflix. They're not great by any stretch, but I am always interested in them. Our standard is the phone check, and I never check my phone during the episodes. Now,
Natalie was living on hers.
I was going to say, I know this is going to be a contentious
Straight
one
on.
because I'm with Blaine. The first episode went very quickly for me. You've probably heard, I think I say it every time we talk about Mike Flanagan, but for me, like, he's not the guy that's like inventing something completely new, but he's taking something like, oh, that's kind of fun, and doing something a little different with it. At least it keeps me entertained. All right, go.
yeah, Natalie, what's not working for you here?
You know how a lot of times I'll say like scary things, like I want to know the story, but I'm too scared to watch it, kind of a deal. Like give me the book version because I would love to know how it ends. I want to read this, and I want to know how it ends because I can't stand to watch the acting in this show.
Really?
It was painfully bad.
Any one or two in particular, or just all?
Most of them.
Huh.
Do you feel that way about Usher?
Yeah, I do. Like so
Roderick
so
Usher?
overly serious. I didn't buy any of it. It was bad. It was like it was bad table read script. I didn't buy it. And then just like weird, like, oh, there's a clown in the car. Like, who cares?
It was. I will say, of the shows that you listed at the top there, Blaine. I've only seen Midnight Mass, which I thought was intriguing and maybe a little overrated when it was on. I kind of watched a lot of people freak out about it, but it was interesting enough. I thought the acting was a limitation, but some of it was really strong too. You pointed out the fellow who plays the sheriff on that season was really good. Some other standouts. This one, so Natalie's going in cold, having not seen that. I was very interested in her reaction to his troupe, his stable of actors, and I guess we should say spoiler warning now.
We
but
will start spoilers here.
This is not a big one, but in that middle section when they zoom around from child to child, not actual children, grown children,
His children.
and his children, and exploring the family, I was like, man, this is it. This is the quicksand that she is not going to recover from, because it has been tenuous so far, and the acting here is like the longer haired son who's kind of the goofball who's bowling in the first scene.
Oh
Frederick.
God.
Freddie. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Henry
that was
Thomas.
like
Freddie.
room level bad.
Yeah,
It was so bad.
that's E.T.'s son.
A.T.'s buddy.
Friend.
So bad.
That was like I felt like I was watching like a CW type show. Like that's the acting level.
Or like a porn was about to break out.
I think the CW is kind of a fair comparison a little bit. I can see that.
And I think the thing that, because we don't watch a lot of the horror or broadly scary film stuff that we watch tends to be, I know, pretentious dude talking here, but like of the A24 variety, or somewhere in like the umbrella of like this kind of transcends the genre, you know? And so we miss out on a lot of like the campiness of scary film. And I know that that's like a draw for a lot of people. It is supposed to be frightening, and maybe they're doing some. And I think Flanagan, like in Midnight Mass, is clearly trying to deal with the psychological effects of religion and what community, all these different like big ideas. So it's not that it's not trying to do something serious, but it's just so goofy in this one that I don't. I'm just we can't switch gears very easily.
Yeah, I don't watch horror for the campiness. I don't like that a lot or at all, honestly.
I think there's people who are very forgiving of their horror if the story's good enough that the actors are kind of like the weakest link to like draw the story along. Does that make sense?
You usually don't see your Oscar winning actors in horror.
Right. I'm thinking about movies like as this is happening, I'm like, well, Natalie really liked The Witch and Midsummer. I'm like, oh, the actresses carrying those have ended up being like huge deals in subsequent years. So it's not a fair comparison.
I felt like Adam made a good point with what you said, where I would agree that this show 100% does not want to transcend the genre. If you're
Right.
if you're looking for that, look elsewhere because it is not interested in transcending.
Which is kind of, I feel like I'm getting a glimpse into like almost like a musical, like I'm at a show for a genre that I don't particularly care for but can appreciate what's objectively good about it. But like
Mhm.
everybody else there loves the aesthetic, the vernacular, the sound, the production, all that stuff, and I'm kind of just
I want to touch on that.
because I am intrigued after episode 1 to continue watching and find out what happens.
I want to touch on that aesthetic specifically in just a second, but actually, my gripes about this show are that it's not scary enough compared to his other works. And the other is right along with what Adam's saying, with especially when I have to compare it to Midnight Mass, he was really at his peak in using horror to deal with big ideas. Here, he's using horror, but his idea isn't big enough. It's just about greed or what should you do as a billionaire, and that is just not interesting enough.
I do think in Midnight Mass, I mean, kudos to anyone swinging the bat, but he is swinging at every pitch. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you swing at every pitch, you turn into a little cartoon that starts spinning like a top because they don't connect with the ball. And when he's kind of trying to tackle, I know this is not a podcast about Midnight Mass, but big ideas of religion and what it means to, it's like these are very, very big ideas to be talking about on a Netflix horror
Right.
program. But I mean, again, he got in the box,
Mhm.
took a few cuts at it.
Back to the aesthetic. Flanagan directed that first episode, and he knows how to light a scene. You know, when Usher and Dupin are in the dark in that old childhood home, his sets are always so exquisite. It's the one of a few reasons why I'm glued to the TV during these episodes. I'm just like, look at this. It looks so amazing on the TV. If you have a fairly decent TV, they look great. And Donovan, you were gonna.
I think I'd agree with you.
Yeah, and even they look good and there's detail, but like the action when they go to the rich man's his dad's house, right, from growing up is so closed. Like the front yard is like a tight gate, and it just keeps that. It almost feels like a good Poe story or any scary short story where it's like the action is right here.
One of Flanagan's faults is that he does start off only okay and not excellently, but he does sort of give you something you want to keep watching for. And then the next episodes build a little. And then he also has the fault of dropping the ball in the last episode sometimes.
Endings are not his are not his strength, which is it is what it is, right?
Beginnings and endings are usually endings. He is more of where did that come from? His beginnings are a little slow, and that's my prediction on how this show will traject. I think, but he's in the ballpark of a probably more of a Ryan Murphy as far as using the same actors. David Lynch, Wes Anderson do these things. It can be confusing sometimes because you're thinking, wait, who is this? Because it's a big cast always.
Because like I know you, but I don't know how. And was it from this show?
Adam, you messaged me shortly after you watched the first episode with complaints about a specific acting choices, maybe even a particular line reading. What was that? You never went into detail. Or maybe it was Natalie who had said it to you and you were relaying that.
Oh, I think that y'all hadn't seen it yet, and so my critique was just going to be what I said about when we made it to the section with the kids. That was my single line of complaint. I didn't have a single line of dialogue that I'm pulling out. Just that those scenes with the kids were so bad that it was. I feel like I have a small foot in the camp. I know kind of what his aesthetic's going to be, and so I'm kind of watching Natalie too, who doesn't like scary stuff generally. It's like there are so many falling off points here for her. I'm never going to convince her to watch episode 2.
It's fair. I can see it. I get the complaint. I do think it's a bit of he should have come up with another idea to get all of those kids in the same room. He was trying to do that so you could differentiate between them and say, here they all are. This is the one who does this. This is the one who does that. He should have come up with another way of doing it. He's mirroring the Sackler family here. But in this case, there's an informant in the Usher family. So you had to get them all together to give each other side glances and say, "Is it you? Is it you?" And
Sure.
I think that did not work. I feel your complaint there wasn't the best way to get them all together. The second bit of plot information is that Roderick Usher gives a huge amount of cash to invest to each of his kids, assuming they can pitch something decent enough. And he'll say, okay, here, go create whatever, which we'll get into that. That's a plot point that might come up. Before Adam and Natalie dive out, so that we don't spoil episode 2 for them, one new addition to Flanagan's cast is none other than Mark Hamill as Arthur Pym, the creepy and laconic family lawyer. Thoughts about him? I guess he's not quite in episode 1 enough, but he's there.
That was Mark Hamill?
Yes.
Yeah, the lawyer's Mark Hamill, Mr. Star Wars.
I had no
Luke
idea.
Skywalker
This is
himself.
news.
Please tell me you knew that, Natalie. Did you recognize him?
Yeah, but I did have to hop on IMDb to confirm because I was like, something's weird because I'm so used to seeing young CGI Mark Hamill now, so I forgot what he looks like as an actual human.
Got a really close buzz cut going, wearing glasses.
I like those glasses he has.
Yeah, he's doing something with his voice as well. It's a little different than what you would be used to. He's kind of graveling, and he's making some choices.
I read a review that was like, oh, Mark Hamill's going to choose some scenery. And normally I'd be like, that's a bad sign. But also, it's Mark Hamill. Like, he knows how to choose scenery at this point. And it's an over-the-top gothic. Like, just let him loose. Let him fly.
Yeah, I really look forward to some scenery chewing from him. But he has more to do in episode 2 and 3.
Certainly.
He's going to unclick his jaw and just go to unhinge it and go to town.
Early on, Roderick and Maddie, his sister, are teenagers in the 1960s, and their crazy religious mother dies. I think it was a silly thing that the mom couldn't be embalmed or treated after her death. I get that when she's still alive, she refuses doctors and hates the idea because of her religion. She thinks God's going to save her if she needs saving. But why couldn't she be embalmed and buried normally after death? I mean, that's really sticking to mom's wishes right there, to bury her in the backyard by hand. A little silly.
No, they were scared kids.
But you got to have her come out of the coffin.
At what point do the brother and sister kiss?
Oh,
it's some Game of Thrones shit, isn't it?
That's all I could think about. It's like, is that what the show is about?
I don't know that it's not what that's about. Anyone ever read Ian McEwan's The Concrete Garden? Because I was getting serious vibes from that book in this first episode with the brother and sister.
He wrote Atonement, right?
He did write. Yeah, he wrote Atonement.
No,
Some
I
other
have.
things.
I haven't read that.
It's kind of nasty, but it's pretty good.
One of my favorite actors in the Mike Flanagan universe is, I think he premiered in Midnight Mass. He plays the version of Roderick in the late 70s and 80s, and that bothered me because I'm worried he won't be used enough, because in Midnight Mass his emotions, I thought, sold some of the things that could have been a little bit more kooky. So I just worry he won't be used as much.
Remind me who he played in Midnight Mass.
The primary guy who has
Okay,
been,
that's the same guy.
yeah,
Gotcha.
he's the Roderick.
I thought he was very good in Midnight Mass.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The first does set up, perhaps too much so, a mystery I hope it's willing to solve. That what's the link to Roderick and Maddie Usher's mom coming back from the dead? What's that got to do with that bartender they meet and the fact that the modern day Usher kids are dead? Having gone through 3 episodes, I'm starting to see some of this, but the bartender's the Raven. You know what I mean? Like, of Poe's lore.
I mean, there's literally a raven above her at the bar. Right?
Yeah.
Like they focus on the raven, and then
And her name is Vera, or something like a something that could be changed into the Raven really quickly. I do have another question, which is somebody might answer. Why did the rich prick back in 1962 who got killed by the resurrected mother? I wondered if he was going to have his business turned over to the 2 kids, but apparently, if you watch a little more, that's not the case. But she goes and kills him, and my question to y'all is, y'all figured out why, right? It was obvious.
Yeah, I mean, he even says it, right?
Oh, okay.
Later in the episode.
Does
it was
he?
It was a Kitty and George Sr. situation. Never promised crazy a baby.
You never promised crazy.
That's just me and Donovan for now, because we're going to talk about episode 2. Spoilers. If you've made it this far, here comes spoilers for 2. What'd you make of Roderick's pitch for Ligadone? He makes a promise of a world without pain.
Yeah, and it's one of those. I thought it like fit, at least with probably thematically, because it's kind of like what his sister seems to be working on still. It's like this idea of like, oh, what could go wrong? You know, like there are no downsides to this, I'm sure. Like, this kind of hubristic, right? Like,
yeah,
like you snap your fingers and you're God if you make a world without pain.
Yeah, but I think in the context, something about it hit me in a heartfelt way. Who wouldn't want a pill that could take away pain? When he said pain, I did not think my back's hurting kind of pain. I thought emotional and mental pain, that I would give me a pill and I'll take it, you know?
Yeah, of course. Who wouldn't?
Yeah. And in that, I just thought it was a good example of how Mike Flanagan can sometimes do some pretty decent writing, dialogue. He can sneak some in there that really works and gives a little bit of a gut punch.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that my overall impression of the first 2 episodes I've seen is that I liked it. There's probably stuff in there that doesn't need to be in there, but when it's all humming together, like I think he's not Stanley Kubrick, but I think like he's a deft enough director that I actually like enjoy watching what he does. So I think when it all clicks, it really clicks.
Yeah. Vulture writer Scott Meslow points out something I wish was a bit more obvious, but maybe it's me that didn't catch it. Dupin and Roderick both sort of wanted the same thing way back in 1979, but yet they didn't sit and talk for 40 years later. It's like they want this world without pain. They want to solve problems, but they just take different tacks.
Yes, extremely different.
You do wonder, which is obviously going to get answered, but how does Roderick go from a seemingly okay family guy to someone who's banging blackjack dealers on yachts in Cannes? I guess money. Money ruins. Is that our theme here?
Yeah, money ruins. The love of money is the root of all evil, right?
Who among us doesn't want to go to an ultra exclusive masquerade orgy?
You mean an ultra exclusive sex orgy?
Isn't that the same thing? I thought it was a nice touch, simple but nice, for them to die of acid while taking acid.
I love to like this. This kid's like every bad stereotype of Gen Z, and it's
He
like
is.
again, like with the factory, it's like what could possibly go wrong? In the factory, holding your rave in the factory, the EPA is desperately trying to shut down.
Yeah, and that does. It's nicely explained in episode 3, which is likely predictable. My takeaway from episode 2 is that this fam likes to bang.
Like to bang, they love to bang.
They love it. They don't even care with whom. Just banging folks or watching people bang doesn't matter.
Say it's a masquerade.
Well, there's that, and there's the couple who bring in a lady so the husband can have sex
Yes,
with
yeah.
a
So
strange.
she could like do like the role play thing where she's like, "Oh, listen, how was your day at work?"
Right, and then you have the daughter she obviously runs some sort of PR firm, and she has 2 assistants that help her during the day, but at night she sleeps with them.
It's like Batman.
How so?
Day, night, different identity. I assume Batman does his sleeping around at night.
Maybe. That does got, money and sex. It's we're dealing with some 7 deadly sins, maybe? I don't
I
know.
mean, it may be cliche, right? But like when you can do anything, it seems like one of the things people like to do anything with is sex.
Yeah.
And that can lead to just like anything else, right? That can lead to abuses. I don't
Mhm.
know if how explicit they're going to be with that, but like how many like rich and powerful people have been like, I can do whatever I want and ruin somebody else's life for something that meant nothing to them.
Interesting that Prospero, and
Very.
I'm glad he was the first to die because he was too cliche. He
Oh, he
really,
was my least favorite one too.
oh, totally. Interesting that he was able to convince his sister-in-law, Frederick's wife, to come to the orgy.
I almost wondered if there was like are we going to get some backstory to that? Or is it just like, you know what, you do look bored. Come to my chemical fire.
And the only backstory you get is that he hates his brother and just wants to stick it to him somehow or another,
Right, yeah.
which is, why? Yeah, you're right. We need some wine here. Is this show great? No, but it's so
No.
fun.
This kind of what I think I was trying to say, agreeing with Adam by saying like it doesn't want to transcend the genre, but if you like, and like I'm not going to say that it's like stretching me as a person, but it's like if you like some of these beats and you like to see like little twists on them, you will be entertained. It's a good Halloweeny show.
It is fine with me as far as that goes. How much of this is Mike Flanagan tired of Netflix? He's going to be working. He's going to be working with Amazon going forward.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
Like
think he got a little tired of Netflix somewhere along the way, but when during this
Amazon
process,
Amazon probably gave him more money too. I can't imagine it's super different, right?
right? I think I'd read somewhere where Flanagan was not incredibly happy with some of the Netflix stuff, and so he, he's going to be with Amazon Prime, I guess. I don't know when that happened or how much of it involved this show or during the show. So
Yeah, I
how
would
much?
say he's not like phoning it in.
Not quite. Is this going to be his best friend? I don't think it will be, though.
Oh no, certainly not. But it's fun.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it.
it is fun.
Do you want to watch rich people get knocked off? Well, I have a show for you.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point, especially gruesomely, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's the end of this week's episode. You can follow this podcast on Twitter or X for the time being, but more permanently on Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok, plus the home site of the Alabama Takes, available on all social media sites and a few more. If you enjoyed something you heard today, go to your app where you listen to the podcast and give it a rating or a review. Until next week, I'm Donovan Rodwald. He's Blaine again. Something like that.
Signing off.
See you guys.
Good night, Mr. and Mrs. America.